Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. If I can ask you to take a seat, please, so we can get started. I know you're all excited to see each other, but we need to get cracking. So the age of confidence, for us, it's more than just a it's more than just a campaign or a theme. For us, it's a bold expression on our purpose and strategic objective of making our South Africans have financial confidence, clarity, and retire with dignity. We believe that the best outcomes come from strong partnerships with trustees, employers, intermediaries, and of course, our members. Our aim today is to inspire collaboration that will make an impactful change. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our Sanlam Leadership Breakfast. My name is Gugulethu Mfuphi, and I have the honor and pleasure of being your host this morning. So today we have a jam-packed session, but before we get started, just a few housekeeping rules. Please ensure that your phones are on silent, just to ensure that there's no disruptions throughout the duration of the session. And the restrooms are out the door to your left. And then for some of you guys who are on social media, I'm not sure, there's a few young people in the room, but for some of you who are on social media, there's going to be photos taken throughout the duration of the course. Duration of, I don't know what's happening with my English starter bundles this morning, guys. Apologies about that. There'll be photos taken throughout the course of the day, so please feel free to tag us on the hashtag #TheAgeOfConfidence. And then lastly, there will be a networking session which will allow you to have collaboration and have those meaningful conversations. So without wasting any more time, for those of you who joined us last year, you'll know that this is the second year we're doing this initiative. We kickstarted last year under the theme, Accelerating a Better South Africa, where every worker, every family, and every community is healthy and financially confident. Today, we draw from that and expand on the theme, the age of confidence. We have an exciting lineup of speakers and panelists who will share their insights on a mixed bag of topics, including an update on the two-part claims experience, the benefits of the Sanlam Umbrella Fund, and of course, insights on sustainable investments. I do see some people just standing. You don't want to get seated quickly? You can, Marie, of course. So while you're getting seated, each session is designed to provide you with valuable takeaways. I'm also told you might even get a sneak peek on one or two stats from the preliminary results from our Sanlam benchmark. So I hope you've registered for our Sanlam benchmark. So without wasting any time, ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome our very own CEO of Sanlam Corporate, Sis Khanyisa Mkhize, who'll be setting the scene for us today. Sis Khanyisa, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Gugulethu. And good morning. I suppose I'm going to say good morning to all of the friends and family that are here. I look at a room that's only got familiar faces. And because it's all familiar faces, you guys all know how much I love being up here. But really, thank you so much for having joined us. Just to maybe reflect, earlier this year, you guys would have noticed that we launched our Age of Confidence campaign. And what we wanted to do with the campaign was to start a somewhat uncomfortable, but what we thought was a completely necessary conversation. We wanted to have a conversation with the industry and the market that really looked to confront some of the real challenges that our colleagues in South Africa were facing. We wanted to have a conversation that would really push us all to think more deeply about what a confident and comfortable retirement would look like. And so for us, this is what the Age of Confidence campaign is rooted in. It's rooted in the insight that it is only a very few South Africans that can even contemplate retiring comfortably and with any kind of dignity. We went into our own data. We looked at our Sanlam Umbrella Fund internal data, which has around 350,000 members. Some of the members are represented in this room through employers and intermediaries. But in that data set, it showed us that the age at which most South Africans can comfortably retire is much closer to age 80. So as a collective and as the people in this room, I think we have a responsibility here, colleagues. It's a tough reality, but we have a responsibility to help our members lead better lives. And also we have a responsibility to enable a much better financial peace of mind. So that's the insight that gave rise to our Age of Confidence campaign. And thank you very much to everyone, Gugu, who's here, who supported with that campaign. But to bring a real focus on South Africa's retirement age, we introduced you to a lovely lady named Pam, a 79-year-old who's actually a living reflection of a reality that too many people face. Can the colleagues in the back please play the video for me?
South Africa's official retirement age is 65. But most South Africans can't afford to retire then. So what's the real story?
To retire comfortably, you need to aim to purchase a pension that is 75% of your final salary. But many South Africans are only able to afford 25% by the time they reach the age of 65, which makes us question, how much longer would an average South African have to work in order to be able to retire comfortably?
To work this out, we had to create a model that actually tracked how long it would take a member's retirement savings to grow until the member could retire with a replacement ratio of 75%. We needed to make an assumption about inflation, your investment return, and with all that in place, we were then able to calculate how long it would take. And we found that it would take you another 15 years before you could retire comfortably. That effectively means that South Africa's retirement age is not 65, but it's actually 80 years old.
At Sanlam Corporate, we're committed to empowering hardworking South Africans with holistic financial solutions to help bring down the retirement age. Together, we can accelerate a better working South Africa. Find out about our holistic solutions.
Thank you. So this 15-year gap between age 65 and age 80, it's for us not just a number. How we've thought about it is it's actually represents a whole range of human stories. It's a story about all of these workers in South Africa that end up having to work so much longer than what they'd planned to, and they actually end up working in what are very difficult and challenging situations. We need to actually reflect a little bit on this. So my team at Sanlam Corporate believes that confident retirement outcomes are actually the S in ESG. Helping people leave the workforce with dignity really strengthens families. It uplifts the communities that we want to serve. And it actually helps us build an economy that is anchored on stability and not so much some of the desperate survival that we see so much of. Our holistic solutions span retirement, risk, savings, advice, health. It's quite a lot of stuff that we try to do. And for us, we think that this holistic approach is how we can start to advocate around, enabling better retirement outcomes and really supporting with employee benefits that members not only understand, but see value in and also use. We want to be more than just a product provider. We want to partner with the employers in this room. We want to partner with the intermediaries, and we want to partner with members as they navigate the many, many complexities that they experience in life, from that very first pay slip to the very, very last one. And our solutions are underpinned by one primary goal, We really want to see people retire with dignity. We want to see them retire with confidence. And we've put together our own view as it relates to how this holistic approach might actually manifest itself in real time. I think we've got another video that I'd like to share.
My name is Lwandile. I'm a market worker and then a father. I wake up at 10 to 3 every day. I have 2 kids, 2 boys. I have dreams for them. I want my children to go further. They must have something that I didn't have.
By empowering hard-working South Africans with financial confidence, we can improve their lives. That's why at Sanlam Corporate, we offer real solutions across a range of categories.
My mother was having a cancer. It worries me if I can get something like that. Because all of my children, that depends on me.
Our Sanlam Group risk solutions are crafted with care to support employees and their loved ones at their moment of need.
Makanozichaza emntwini ke buza uba ndingutata onjani. Yona question yakhe yalula. Ngutata okwaziyo ukukhathalela abantwana bakhe.
At Sanlam Corporate, we know that South African dreams depend on an income. So we'll continue working hard to make sure Lwandile has access to affordable risk cover, giving him and his loved ones the financial confidence to move their lives forward.
Thank you. As part of the Age of Confidence campaign, we created a series of videos similar to the one that you've just seen. These videos, they feature everyday working South Africans. We met market worker Lwandile, who you've just seen, along with Mumtaz, who cares for the community's elderly, Paul, who works as a maintenance manager, and Leonard, who works the graveyard shift looking after small animals. We took their life stages into account, listened to what keeps them awake at night, and then shared the Sanlam Corporate solutions that best suited their needs and their affordability. We are leaders, we are decision makers, and we need to stop looking at retirement as just a number and really think about it as a journey that we can support our members through. There are a couple of things, different ways that we are considering how we can partner with our members. We think about adopting life cycle contribution models. So your savings grow automatically as your salary does, and you don't feel the pinch on your take-home pay. We've thought about the better use of employer matching programs, which optimize employer contributions and ratios and turn benefits into real leverage for long-term financial security. We want to provide access to integrated financial services, advice, and planning tools. We want to better support the decision-making at every single life stage. We are investing through the help of our colleagues at Fed Health and Afrocentric in making affordable healthcare solutions that have tailored benefits, and we can journey with colleagues towards retirement and beyond. And we're also offering through the group risk business risk cover that can prevent a short-term crisis from becoming a lifelong financial spiral. Next, as Olitilo mentioned, I'm going to give you guys a very, very sneak preview of some of what we've learned in our benchmark survey for 2025. So next month, on the 19th of June, we'll be presenting our Sanlam Benchmark 2025 research. And that, as in previous years, gives us a little bit more deeper insight into some of the trends in employee benefits and healthcare in SA. I'm not going to share too much today, but I will say that almost 60% of the members that we surveyed have said that to them being financially confident means being debt-free. Another 2/3 say that they rely on a side hustle for extra money. And almost half colleagues don't have any emergency savings to fall back on. So we're super proud of having entered our age of confidence, but we are clear that this is just the beginning. I want to thank every single person that's here today. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart, not only for attending, but also for the work that you guys are all doing in the industry. We know that a better working South Africa is never going to build itself. So to every single employer who's investing in better employee benefits, every intermediary who is walking the path with their members and guiding them and educating them through uncertainty, thank you. Thank you so much for helping us shape a much more sustainable and reliable and certain future. At SC, Sanlam Corporate, will continue to walk alongside with you, and we want to thank you again. Let's keep this conversation going. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Sis Kanyisa, for those valuable insights on our campaign, The Age of Confidence. And I'm sure everyone in the room can share and can see that we're serious about collaboration as well as strategic partnerships that go a long way. Next, we have a panel discussion that delves in on the age of confidence and what that means for us at Sanlam Corporate, the industry, as well as our stakeholders. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome our esteemed panelists. Now, if I can ask that when I call the panelists up on stage, your name that you come up on stage. So first up, we've got Gerald van Wyk, who is the CEO of Afrocentric Group. Next up, we've got Mr. Dani van Zyl, who's the head of Smooth Bonus Center of Excellence at Sanlam Corporate Investments. And then we have our very own managing executive of Corporate Solutions, Mr. Wouter Daxon. And then lastly, we have our managing executive of Sanlam Group Risk. Like, I must tell you, I've been practicing the surname because us duckies also get this wrong, right? So please help me welcome Sanne-Marie Krause. Thank you. So leading today's panel discussion is none other than a lady that I really, really look up to, Gugulethu Mfuphi, and awarding, oh my goodness. Nzwa's coming on later on. I know you're excited to see him, but he's coming later on in our session. Oh, you are? Okay. Apologies, guys. I think there's something happening with me today. Nzwa, apologies. I'm so glad our bonuses have gone. I think I would have gotten a really bad KPA. Apologies for that, Nzwa. Please help me in welcoming our managing executive, our Sanlam Umbrella Solutions, Nzwa Shonisa. Apologies, Nzwa. And then leading out today's panel discussion is none other than Gugulethu Mfuphi, an award-winning broadcaster and the voice behind Kaya FM's flagship business show called Kaya Biz. Gugulethu is one of South Africa's most respected financial commentators, known for her sharp insights and commanding presence on stage. She's moderated high-profile industry panels, chaired national conversations, and even facilitated the South African Investment Conference hosted by President Cyril Ramaphosa. With experience spanning from Talk Radio 702, SAFM, Lotus FM, and the list goes on. Gugu, the stage is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ole. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
I think we can do better than that. We're here to build the economy, change lives, and make sure that we see shape shifters evolving in terms of the South Africans that have been on the video. So, a very good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Fantastic. That's the energy that we want. Again, thank you so much for the wonderful introduction. And of course, as has been introduced, is our esteemed panel who will be giving us some insight into a very critical conversation that we will be holding today, ladies and gentlemen. One where each of you play a critical role in terms of how South Africans, you and I, really, beyond the numbers, and the loved ones and colleagues and employees that we work with, ultimately see a different dynamic in terms of the future that they're trying to build. And when it comes to money, it's often been said that it doesn't buy you happiness, but it gives you options. And essentially, that's what we're trying to ensure that retirees in South Africa have. That Pam and many others like her can have options as to what they do with their time, what resources they're able to tap into with their wealth, and most importantly, understanding the journey that we need to embark upon to get them there. Now, as has been mentioned, Ole, you might have forgotten Nzwa's name, but I know you know the importance of his work and the function, and most importantly of Sanlam Corporate. And Nzwa, I'm reminded of a conversation that we had 3 months ago on the back of the data that was shared by the Age of Confidence. And of course, we will hear insight into this in a presentation a little later on today. But what was so critical with the audience that we typically speak to is that everyone was flabbergasted by how long it would take for them to actually work to live a life of comfortable retirement, age 80. And I believe that that's a number that really needs to sit in the back of our minds as many South Africans. But what's critical for us, perhaps, as we deep dive into the conversation and get quick responses from many of our panelists over the next 35 minutes, is for us perhaps just to take 2 steps back and go back to an understanding of the importance of retirement. Perhaps making it sexy again, especially where we see a shift in the workplace dynamic where millennials and Gen Zs now make up the bulk of the workforce.
Yeah. Great. Thanks, Gugu, and good morning, everyone. I guess, from our side, one of the challenges we've always had when we track the period or the ages that people start interacting with our tools and, checking their net replacement ratios, it's usually closer to retirement. And what's happened now, you've got this shift where you've got a lot of younger members that are part of our umbrella fund. So how do we make it relevant to a 25-year-old to understand that as much as retirement age is 65, it is still going to happen, and it's a decision that they make today which will impact their ultimate net replacement ratio. So some of the aspects that we're looking at is not only targeted communication, but I think an important one that I'll talk to in my presentation is that education that needs to happen at much earlier stage. Because people really, they don't care about retirement when they start working at age 25. It's something that's so far away. And that's why I was quite excited about the route we took with this campaign. I've presented quite a few times at Benchmark, and every single time, all we've spoken about is net replacement ratio of 20 to 25%, and we explain what that is. For a lot of people, they still don't understand what that means, even though we explain that it's 25% of your final salary that you'll earn as a pension. But when you say to someone that's younger and is working and is 25 years old, that you're actually going to work until the age of 80.
Yep.
And that advert that you see about retirement, which is you on a yacht and sipping champagne, won't happen until they're actually 80. Maybe that angle that we've taken now will actually resonate with the younger people.
100%.
So I think it's a different approach that we need to take as an industry in terms of how we get younger people to start making the right decisions today, which ultimately impact their future lives.
100%. I'm glad you highlight that, the difference in the approach, of course, enhancing education. But if there's anything that we've all witnessed as key industry players, is that the retirement industry has seen a lot of shifts. We've called for reform. We've called for heightened education. We've called for increased awareness. And truth be told, have we not seen it? There have been some shifts that have taken place, but I do think as we reflect on some of the numbers regarding two-part, if I'm not mistaken, the last figures quoted by Sanlam Corporate at the end of 2024 was withdrawals upwards of 1.6 billion rand. We continue to see the figures that were just quoted by Kanyisa highlighting the financial strain that South Africans are actually under, focusing on side hustles, not having emergency savings. This obviously tells us that we need to do something more and something different in Zwa from an industry-wide approach that probably speaks to multi-pronged partnerships as well to see this shift. I'm keen for you to share your thoughts on this one, and voter, feel free to add if you have some comments too.
Yeah, so again, one of the questions that's come through at the back of this campaign, and Kanyisa touched on it, is whose responsibility is it to solve this? And I think from our side, where we've landed, internally around these discussions, that it has to be a collaborated effort across all stakeholders. And when we say all stakeholders, that involves government. You've spoken to the role that they play, employers, joint forums, but most importantly, I think the advisors that mostly sit in this room, given that they've got that direct interaction with employers as well as members, and they are a trusted voice. So I think that's why we have these types of sessions, to make sure that there's alignment between what we are doing and how we are thinking of things in the product house versus what's actually happening on the ground with advisors or chatting directly to members. You can have a bunch of actuaries, of which we've got many at Sanlam, building all sorts of models and building all sorts of solutions. But if you're out of touch with what's actually happening and what members need, I think there's always going to be that disconnect in terms of solving this crisis that needs to be solved as soon as possible. So that's sort of where we stand at the moment.
100%. Voted?
Absolutely. I think there's no doubt about the research, and in conversation with clients that they're telling us that they are financially stretched and therefore financially stressed. So they're worried about things like longevity risk, inflation, cost of healthcare and so forth, which are very valid for most South Africans.
Yeah.
On a second component of that is how we communicate with people, and they say to us they want it to be simplistic. And I mean, Nzwa touched on it, where we were talking about replacement ratios, and yet people don't get it. So we communicate, but communication is only effective as what the person on the other side is hearing. So with the retirement age of 80, I think it became more pertinent as to what the real issue is. And I just picture on a lighter note myself getting on that yacht he's talking about with a kiri because I'm too old to get on. Those are the type of realities that people are seeing. But I think on a more serious note is we need to put a lot of emphasis in communicating in a way that people can hear.
Yeah.
I think that's a very important component for us.
Got you. And I think that's an important one for us to actually hold on to. And if I may just jump on that in terms of communication, maybe just expand on it a lot more. Because as you say, we've got individuals in the room who are at that touch point of finding that balance with the employer and the employee. What heightened level of role does need to take place in terms of that communication? We've got the number 80, but certainly it seems as though we need to add more aspects to it just to ensure that the message really does hit home.
So if I can elaborate perhaps on the role that the employer can play. I think the first component of that is they need to make use of the data that's available. Data tells you a lot of things. It tells you, if you analyze something like data when people take their money, what does it say to you? And if you take those data points, how can you move those specific data points? A second component I think that's very valuable is the active role in employers driving a culture change, a culture change of wellness. I think people need to understand illness costs money. And it not only costs money today, but it has a long-term effect on your retirement fund as well. If you have to pay a bigger premium for disability, you save less for retirement. So these type of things are connected. And then lastly, I think it's important to leverage trusted partners. And I think what is a trusted partner? I think the first component of a trusted partner is someone that really cares. So it needs to come from a good place. And then secondly, make the relevant tools available, things like the campaign we're having about 80, that actually clients need to say, okay, I get it. So what do we now do about that?
100%. I want us to touch on the health component in just a moment, and we'll come to you for that, Jared, because if there's anything that we are witnessing is that health does play a higher level of priority. We're even seeing it from many of the healthcare firms. Just yesterday, if I'm not mistaken, Netcare or Life Healthcare, highlighting that they're boosting their level of investment within mental health care facilities. And if you consider the fact that one of the biggest drivers for mental health concerns is financial, there's a very important link that we need to find there.
Definitely.
But I do want us to come back to that age dynamic, and maybe let's come back to you here, Dani, just to highlight and, of course, even emphasize even further, on the back of the data and information that we continue to review in terms of that information. And as voters said, making sure that information hits us in our face, the reduction of that age from 80 to 65. I'm told that 1 in 4 South Africans would be able to retire comfortably. So looking around the room, I'm not too sure which part of the numbers we all sit on, but maybe share your perspective as to how we need to heighten the level of emphasis in the reduction of the retirement age for us to do so and achieve that financially and successfully so.
No, thank you. So, assuming the members contribute enough, that's always the first question. Then I think the other important thing to ensure that members have a confident or successful retirement outcome is just to avoid the 3 big or killer investment mistakes that members often make. The first one is we call reckless conservatism. We've all seen that people think they're being conservative, but then they invest in cash for a 20, 30-year period. And that's just reckless. Your investors are not going to keep track with inflation.
It might have done well in April, though, with all the drama.
Short periods of time. I mean, long term, I'm willing to debate that one. And then, also, members tend to overreact and panic when there's a market crash, climbing out of the market, and then if I get to climb back in, disinvesting at the wrong time. So for those reasons, it's quite important. All retirement funds have default options. Those need to be appropriate, and members need to be aware of them and use them. That's quite important. And just to touch on that, a mistake that most members are making at the moment is they're not considering the trustee-endorsed annuity strategies. So all retirement funds have to have a trustee-endorsed annuity strategy. It's institutionally priced, so you get the good price and all of that. Most members don't even look at that. They go to the retail market, buy the same annuity at the retail price, and pay a lot more for it. So just to put it in a different way, if you want to buy, let's say, an inflation-linked annuity, you can pay up to 10% more. So turn it around. Your income you're going to get every year for the rest of your life. It's 10% less than what it could have been. I mean, that's just criminal. So I think the important thing is for trustees, joint forums, and consultants is to ensure that there's appropriate default options available. We have a wide range in the Sanlam Umbrella Fund, and that people know about the defaults and actually know about the trustee endorsed annuity strategy. That will help members, retire with confidence, and hopefully many years before they actually reach 80, they can afford to do so.
100%. And I think that's critical that you mentioned. And perhaps just to go back to some of the technical language that you used there in a moment, I'm trying to think of a 45-year-old relative who would sit and say, trustee endorsed retirement annuity.
Yeah.
We might know what it means in the room, but that's also part of the languaging, right?
True,
that also
true.
needs to shift in terms of how it lands with the consumer base.
No, definitely. And I think the most important thing is most members don't even know these options are available. And I think that's the concern. And despite many resources being available, people don't often go out and look for it. We need to go to them in their space or where they what to communicate in and communicate those options to them as voters mentioned.
Yeah, 100%. Voter, I want to come back to you in just a moment, especially taking a look at the dynamic of the consumer that we need to look at. Health has been brought up, retirement as a priority has certainly come up, ensuring that we educate them effectively and share the necessary messaging with them. But of course, we do need to look at a consumer and individual from a 360 approach, understanding their retirement needs, risk, and of course, investment goals and objectives that they also might have. I'm keen to understand your thinking around what it is that we need to see shift within the industry to ensure that we meet all of these needs, much like we saw in the video, to ensure that we meet all consumers' needs fully in terms of the solutions that are provided, but also how we communicate that to them.
Absolutely. I think the first step, again, back to data. I think we sit with a lot of data that we don't necessarily effectively use. I think Sanlam is the leader in that we look at, as an example, the benchmark research that we've done is telling us a lot of things. Members are telling us a lot of things. And I think we can use that data very effectively. So that's the first one. I think the second one is human-centered design, where we literally talk to clients and say, co-design solutions with us, rather than imposing things on people, because people just don't go along with you telling them what to do. But if you can put a solution on the table that they believe is a problem to them and they help co-design the solution, that's a very different mindset. And then lastly, I think behavioral nudges is how can we nudge a person in the right direction? Because often people intuitively know what's good for them, but they actually don't have clear direction. And if you can meet them where they are and then take them on a journey to a place that's better for them, letting them see that vision, I think that makes a big difference.
100%. Gerard, this is where you come in, meeting people where they are. And you do that so effectively in terms of the work that you do at Afrocentric. And I think it's important to pull that in. Where are people in terms of their mindset, their health, and how do we ensure that the necessary conversations that have been highlighted by your peers on the panel do come through to the solutions then that are provided not only by the industry, but other stakeholders as well?
Yeah, thanks, Gugu. And again, good morning, everybody. It's actually quite scary if you just reflect on the mental health issue and the impact it has on overall workplace productivity. What we see in our universe, for instance, is that year on year, we've seen a 25% increase in hospitalization due to mental health for people under the age of 35.
Repeat that number again.
25% year-on-year increase for people under the age of 35. Now, what's even more scary is that we know that this is significantly underreported because of the stigma still associated with mental health. So that could be well double, if not more, in terms of what the true extent of it is. And for us in the room, thinking about that impact from a workplace perspective, you're already dealing with productivity challenges, absenteeism challenges. But now, as a result of this, you're dealing with what we refer to as presenteeism, where people are actually present but mentally burned out or disengaged. And it's estimated that the true impact of mental health in the workplace on the South African economy is actually close to about 4% of GDP. And so that really gives you a grounding perspective of how big this is. It's a silent epidemic. And I think we need to acknowledge and deal with it from that perspective. But coming back to what I'm listening in terms of the real age of retirement and how that impacts healthcare, I think we need to have this conversation as well. Essentially, Google, what it then means is that People retiring at a later age just places more increase on already burdened private and public healthcare system as it relates to resources and funding. And we believe that this real age of retirement will likely just lead to an increase in cost across the board. If you think about it, yes, it's all good and well and positive that people will contribute more towards healthcare expenditure. But what it does also mean on the flip side is there will be a higher demand for healthcare services, and this will put financial strain on all of us in the room, whether it is, a scheme, an insurer, an employer, or an employee, as it comes to the financial strain. And I think where it becomes real then as a result of people working longer is that people will develop more chronic conditions before retirement. And for us on the healthcare provider side, on funding side, what it then means is we're going to deal with more claims for longer periods. Now, I guess you can argue that we can price for these claims. True. I mean, if there's an increase in utilization, in hospitalization, in chronic medication, one could price for it, but who pays for it? It's the member. It will come through in increased contributions, and that's less money towards retirement.
100%.
And I think maybe just in summary around that point, just so that it lands really for what it is in terms of the impact, is that unfortunately in some instances it will go even further than that, because then we might also have to really look benefit design. And that has the potential downstream impact of people having to pay for more out-of-pocket expenses that can't be covered because it's now not sustainable anymore to keep up with a higher demand in healthcare cost that's required. But I guess all of these things also spell opportunity, right?
Yeah.
And I just want to quickly make that point, and that is it really, for us as a managed care organization, forces us to accelerate, value-based care as a solution to these challenges. Yes, we need to work in a more integrated fashion to actually bring down the real age of retirement, and I think that's important, and that's where we think health and risk and retirement will play a significant role to do that. But ultimately, what we should also be doing now is to say, how do we actually deal with the issue in a more sustainable, innovative way? If you think about it, people who, in South Africa, 30% of people over the age of 65 live with chronic pain that's associated with lower back, arthritis, osteoporosis, and other musculoskeletal type diseases. And that is one of the highest prevalences of chronic conditions amongst members in any type of cohort you look at. So if we can now bring in solutions like value-based care that moves us from transactional into more of a partner-based solution, we can now deal with that overutilization in a more effective way and directly bring down the cost of healthcare and put more money or dispose more money for people to actually bring down the cost of retirement through their retirement contribution. So I think quite impactful in that regard, and it requires a rethink completely, Gugu.
Definitely a rethink, and of course a new approach to how it is that we see this dynamic and source for solutions. And you've touched on so many key figures that I think are critical for us to be mindful of in terms of those stats regarding mental health care. And as much as it might appear as though those figures are largely towards those under the age of 35, the truth is we see the physical manifestation of some of those frustrations and ailments physically when it comes to the older generation. And as you've mentioned, that largely does lead to chronic conditions. But what you have touched on here, Gerard, I think is so important, because you said it requires a rethink. And this definitely means that it almost needs, a reconfiguration of the ecosystem to ensure that insurers, healthcare providers, wellness, of course, retirement savings, and of course, risk is also covered in terms of speaking to the full needs of the South African consumer. And Sanlam, this is where you come in. And maybe you can, together with Gerard, share some of your thoughts and sentiments here regarding what shifts do need to take place within that ecosystem and changes that fundamentally need to be implemented in order to see a better outcome for the consumer.
Yeah, thanks, Gugu. Morning, everyone. I think in terms of when you start thinking about, we're talking about a whole lot of product sets here. So we're talking about retirement, we're talking about risk, we're talking about health. I think as providers and also the advice community, we still think too much in products. If we want to think ecosystem, we talk about integration, right? We've been talking about integration in this industry for a long time. But if you really want to integrate in a way that serves the member and that speaks to some of these underlying problems like mental health issues and so on, you need to not put a whole lot of products next to each other, list those products and try and explain them to people. You need to integrate the touch points. So the touch point, what I mean here by a touch point is where the member interacts with that product set. Group risk benefits are interesting in terms of touch points because, as everyone in this room knows, the touch points are very infrequent. So it's that complete crisis that happens in the family. It's when someone died in the family or when a very serious health event, way beyond a medical aid event, when a serious health event happens, that's when the touch point happens, right? For most of our working community, we hope that those touch points won't happen during their working life. Although if we're talking retirement age 80, they will. So the challenge with group risk benefits is the touch points are very few and far between. But when you start integrating this product set, when you talk about integrating health products, integrating wellness offerings, and then starting to integrate that with your disability benefits and your severe illness benefits and so on, what happens when you start integrating a member's health management with their risk benefits is you have the opportunity for those touch points to happen much earlier. Where I think we need to go as a provider community and where Sanlam Corporate is also trying to go is to make sure that we build our ecosystems and our background information and data in such a way that we can, at that first touch point, when someone engages with us around a health management event, we can start seeing the whole member and thinking about them as a whole member. And also then use the opportunities to start talking to them about where we can intervene, where we can help, where they might end up if it's disability, start educating on those benefits. And if we can do that, if we can pull that data and that conversation together at an integrated touch point, then we will be able to really make a difference to members, to actually have a conversation with them that can change the course of events.
What you're highlighting here is just reminding me of the opening video we saw of the gentleman who mentioned that his mother had cancer. And he himself is actually trying to ensure that he provides for his family. So again, ensuring that that touch point hits a personal note close to home, which speaks to how this information is further filtered down right to the client and the consumer.
Yes, so imagine that gentleman phoned, he's anxious about this, about cancer in his family, and he phones his employer's wellness program. Imagine someone can have a conversation with him at that point saying, okay, this is what you should do from an intervention point of view, the intervention benefits that are covered under your medical aid. And by the way, do you know that you do actually have cancer cover under your employer's benefit type? So if the worst should happen, immediately you intervene on the mental health as well. But you cannot have that conversation unless your touch points are properly enabled for it. Because we deal with big employers and big groups, and you need to have that information in front of you and have the proper integration that backs it.
Let's talk on those touch points. Gerald, I want you to add your thoughts here. How do we, emphasize this and accentuate it to ensure that it's accessible?
Yeah, and I think this is absolutely powerful what Sanmarie is mentioning, because for me, really, this intersection of health, risk, retirement is the opportunity to really build out what we are referring as the age of confidence. But it requires exactly those two things. It's one, strategic integration, but also buy-in from all stakeholders in terms of the advice element, the employer, the funder, and the insurer. I think that's critical, because if you get it right, it comes back to Wouter's point around the shared data insights. And that's critical, because now what it allows us to do is to actually then bring together solutions that speak to, okay, what's tailored for the workplace that makes sense based on the data and the insights we're seeing. That's quite proactive in that regard. But it also then speaks to how do we solution around risk-rated health interventions. And this for me is critical, because it's about moving the inflection point of value away from the disease is now here, let's deal with it, let's treat it, to actually how do we prevent it. Because if we have the data sets and we work in a collaborative, integrated way, we can actually deliver on that care continuum from prevention and wellness to actually the disease management, and then ultimately, obviously, hopefully drive the sustainability of it. Last point, just I think to what Sanmarie is mentioning, that is quite critical in how we solution and then deliver on this. For me, it speaks to how do we ultimately then ensure that the member is empowered.
Yes.
And it speaks to everything you've tied to the conversation earlier around communication, awareness, knowledge. But for us, from a healthcare perspective, members can't be passive in the decisions around their health journey. They need to be active participants, and it calls for less of a fragmentation in how we deliver care and more of a collaborative approach that also takes into consideration the member's voice and making sure they're empowered. And I think if we can bring those elements together, Gugu, really what we are building here at Sanlam Corporate to deliver the age of confidence is a reality sooner rather than later.
100%. This gets me excited because we're hearing all the right solutions, right? And we understand the kind of partnership that is required, not only in terms of the regulatory shifts that we do need to see within the industry. We've got the product solution and development from key organizations and institutions, riding out the wave and the investment trends despite the volatility. We've got the insurance ensuring that there's ongoing interaction and the prioritization of the healthcare of the employee and customer at the end of the day. And we hear this word come up consistently, the integration. This might be an unfair question, but who leads this? Because at some point, when you come with a solution and another partner comes with a solution, as we've witnessed, when there's differing opinions, there often leads to some conflict there. Let's get your feedback here, Nzwa. Sanmarie, well, it's open to the panel, really.
I can add on this one. I think if I look at...
He wants to lead this.
If I look at some of the stats that we've seen come through via the benchmark research, there's a call from employers around this holistic value proposition, more so after COVID, where they wanted to incorporate healthcare. So we spent a long time only discussing retirement benefits, net replacement ratios, our admin platform, and never really focused on how we integrate healthcare. And I think from our side, given the rise in umbrella funds, commercial umbrella funds, and the consolidation that's happening in the industry with standalone funds closing down, we still think that the winner in this umbrella fund space is that player that's going to integrate and have this holistic value proposition that makes sense for advisors. Something that they can take to employers, which incorporates risk, incorporates retirement, incorporates the in-fund benefits, and incorporates healthcare. So I think from our side as Sanlam Corporate, we need to lead this in conjunction with advisors. And in conjunction with advisors, the back of the comment that's been made, where they are closer to the members, they understand the solutions that are being asked for. We cannot just solution on this side. It has to be, some sort of partnership with advisors. But through umbrella funds, I think that's the gateway into all these products. So what you see as a member is that you see that I'm a member of Umbrella Fund X, but what's at the back end is a holistic employee benefits value proposition. So I think that's obviously I'm Mr. Umbrella Fund, so I would say that.
Yes.
But that's sort of where we see the industry going, and the winner will be whoever gets that right. And that's what we're trying to do with Gerald.
Got you. Wouter, go ahead.
I just want to add to it. I think if you look at a member, what I think our industry has been lacking to a large extent pre this integration discussion is that we saw problems in isolation and we wanted to solve it in isolation. Where you deal with a human, finances has an impact on your mental health, that has an impact on. I think one shift that I would like to see in the industry is the role that intermediaries are playing. Because I too often still hear intermediaries saying, but I'm a retirement fund specialist, so that's what I'm focusing on. And that may be good and well. I'm not saying everyone needs to be a specialist in everything, but you need to service your client holistically. That means you need to partner with someone else that can fill in the gap. I cannot see that you'll be able to service a client long term by dealing with a component of the wellness of a member. It has to be a shift in the thinking of corporates like ourselves, as well as intermediaries, so that we can impact on the solution that clients need.
Got you. Sanmarie?
Yes, maybe the question you asked there was, who should lead the integration. I think all the parties have got a role to play. The thing to note about integration is it's complex. It's not easy to get this right. So because if you just place products next to each other and you talk about them together, all you're doing is cross-selling, right? So you're not doing integration. Integration requires, unfortunately, systems enablement. So where that member touches you, you need to be able to see all their information. Now, the companies, the providers, from a provider side who are in the best position to give an integrated solution set are the big providers like Sanlam Corporate. So you can see the people here. We've got all of those tools in our arsenal. that also means that we've got big systems and big IT architecture ecosystems in the background.
Gotcha.
And you have to do the work to integrate those properly so that where that member touches you, you don't actually pass them around and talk to them about just one thing at a time. So we need to get really good at having a functional integration layer in our systems so that we can give life to the conversation, not just talk about it, but actually give it, put it in place in such a way that our members can experience it.
100%.
And then I just want to mention one other aspect here that we haven't talked about, and that's also the trust. We know there's data privacy, and people sometimes don't want to give their data around. We've got a long road to walk in terms of member trust, especially with mental health challenges in the environment. People want to reach out. They want to get help from a wellness program. They want to find out what cover they've got in their medical aid and what cover they might have if things get really bad. They don't want their employer to know about that. Yeah. And we need to build the processes and the trust with our members so that we can have these conversations with them, but without actually heightening their anxiety in the process.
Got you, 100%. And I believe, Jared, perhaps that's a point that you can also underscore in terms of walking that journey with the client to ensure that they understand it's not just a retirement conversation, it's not just a risk conversation, but here are the dynamics here to enlighten you on this journey, but also ensure that the trust is there. Don, feel free to add.
Most definitely, and just quick point on that. I think just quickly on the mental health thing, and that's critical for us as a collective, especially those that sit in front of the client and the client themselves, is mental health is a disease, and we need to start with destigmatizing it the same way we've done successfully over the last 3 decades around HIV and AIDS. And we can achieve the same results if we start with that underpin of building our systems and processes in such a way that enhances and amplifies trust so that people can engage on the programs that are effective and meaningful to help address that issue. But just coming back to who builds this, I think we really are at a intersection where we have optionality. It starts with the data and the insights. Yeah. And from that alone, the conversation is already enriched, whether it's in front of the advisor, with the advisor, over the phone, through an interaction, still potentially in silo with the product houses. But I think that's critical. Secondly, we're really at an exciting juncture as the Sanlam Group in how we are looking at developing reward systems and rewards platforms and loyalty programs that I think will become a key enabler to bring us as product houses into an ecosystem where we can engage with the client more meaningfully and across products and across opportunities. So that's important. And then to Sanmarie's point around the actual layer of integration that speaks to the complexities of our various systems. So it's not a challenge that we can't overcome. I think it's one that we are really driving and putting a lot of things in place to solution for. We have no other choice. Yep. The reality in our world, Gugu, is that already as it stands today, without knowing this increase in retirement age, is that a third of the people we care for, and there's 4 million of them, a third of them contribute to 76% of the healthcare cost in the system. Oh. And so if they then retire later and they place additional burden, this just becomes worse. So we have no choice. If we want to make this relevant and sustainable, we need to drive integration and overcome the complexities.
100%. Donnie, your thoughts?
Yes, I just wanted to step back to, I think, a point that Nzwa and Sanmarie made about, we have the data, we can build the system and all of that, but really the person who can be the hero in the story is the advisor, because they do know the client better. And I engage a lot of, provide investment feedback to joint forums. And you can immediately see 3 or 4 minutes into the meeting, which advisors are adding value. They know their client, they get things done. And others where you basically feel you need to introduce the client to the advisor. And unfortunately, you have both. And it's really something we need to work at as an industry.
Yeah.
And fortunately, I think we have a lot of good consultants in the industry. And hopefully, they will grow and help more of the clients.
Definitely. If that's not a call to action, I don't know what more is. But I do want us to just share some of the concluding remarks from each of you as panelists, because what you've highlighted throughout the last 30 minutes are really very critical insights that we need to be mindful of. There's a harsh reality that we're facing as South Africans, and that's been underscored by the data, the information, and the presentations that will be shared throughout the course of today. We also clearly understand that the information and insights that is shared by this data and information is what we need to make use of. It sets the roadmap ahead for us to understand what interventions need to be incorporated in an integrated manner to ensure that we meet the needs of the clients from a 360 point of view. One thing is quite clear is that we do understand that key stakeholders are all on board to make sure that we address this particular need and concern, but we definitely need to move with speed, with accuracy, and most importantly, with the customer and the client and their needs as our end goal in mind. You've all taken us, on a journey on understanding just the complexities, but more so the opportunity that does exist. But fundamentally, what we do want is to shift the needle. In 10 years' time, we'll be 10 years older, closer to 80, given that that's the target that many of us need to reach. But we're also looking to not only reach closer to a senior level of age, but reducing the age of retirement. That is the priority. I'm going to challenge each of you as our panelists, 30 seconds or less. What commitment can you make within the industry and the stakeholder group that you represent to ensure that we shift the needle forward in reducing the age of retirement in South Africa and ensuring that we have a heightened level of retirement success in the country for our customers and clients and ourselves? Nzwa, umbrella funds, tell us more about the new surprises you'll be bringing forward, as you mentioned.
No, I guess, for us, Kanyisa touched on it. The ultimate goal is improve member retirement outcomes, and you want as many people to retire with dignity. It should not be a luxury just for the few in terms of retirement. And I think how we are thinking about it from a product perspective is to see what else can we add as value-added benefits, what other partnerships can we include within the umbrella fund that will help with reducing this age from 80 to 65, 63, 60. I think that's really the conversation that's happening. The issues that we've faced in this industry haven't changed for a very long time. It's low savings rates, it's lack of preservation. Two-Pot will address that, but it won't move the needle fast enough to get to the crisis that we're in now. So what are the other opportunities that we need to look at? I think a big one that's been touched on by not only Kanyisa, but some of the panelists today is this issue around financial literacy and education. That one is a role that can be played by all the key stakeholders that exist within our industry. And I think that education drive, if members understand the impact of the decisions that they make today, if we empower members with the right knowledge, the right tools, we will probably see better behavior, which will ultimately improve retirement outcomes in the future. I think that's one that we'll call low-hanging fruit from our side.
100%. Sanne-Marie, commitment you can make?
So to reducing the retirement age from 80.
Yes.
Group Risk will continue to do what Group Risk does, which is protecting our breadwinners, who are incredibly important in South African society, given the number of people who rely on them, protecting them from having not only their retirement savings completely derailed, but also having their lives derailed by a risk event. Because these things happen to families, and if you don't have protection against them, when you become disabled or when close family members die, then your retirement savings will be derailed and 80 will probably go up and become never. So we will continue to do that with passion and with diligence and with care and with market-leading products and make sure that we protect breadwinners' ability to earn.
100%, especially in an economy like ours that still struggles with high levels of unemployment. Wouter.
When Gerald talk about technology and the things that we are building, I want to sit on the edge of my chair because I'm so excited about what's coming in the Sanlam Group. If you look at what we're doing through our fintech colleagues, I wish we had the time and place to tell you about all of that, but all in good time. So
but
I think
AI
this whole
is working to our
integration,
benefit.
yeah, I think this whole integration thing is coming our way, which will be awesome for our industry. But I think from a secondary, what can we do? I think what's important for us is to know that we're all accountable. And what that means is if we walk away here, we can't just come and listen to a talk like this. We all sound very clever and intellectual. We go away from here and we do exactly what we've done yesterday.
Yeah.
If we do not walk away here thinking conversations around the table needs to start changing, then things are not changing. You cannot go sit around the table and talk about how quick a claim is paid. That cannot lead discussions at a client's table. This type of how does things impact, what the data points is, how do we change it, do we change discussions, and how do you then engage with providers to enable that type of change? I think those are the type of things that we need to talk to, and that's my commitment.
100%. Dani?
On the investment side, time is a resource. You need to invest for a long enough time to have your money in retirement. So we can commit from our side that while your money is invested with us, we'll look after it passionately, irrespective of Trump, irrespective of tariffs, all of that. But if you're going to start withdrawing your money every year, your two-part withdrawal, even if you don't need the money, our investments and what we can do cannot make up for that. And I think that's a good, important point.
And time in the market, not timing the market, right? Gerald?
Gugu, the managed care organization commits to focus on strengthening and deepening our clinical innovation, and then to integrate meaningfully with risk and retirement, because our role is to go the opposite direction of where we want the retirement age to go. We want to increase health span.
Yes.
So we want people to live healthier for longer, way past retirement and as close to their lifespan. And to do that, we are focusing single-mindedly on clinical innovation. That's our commitment.
100%. Ladies and gentlemen, we've heard it all. For increasing financial education, protecting breadwinners, technology being used to ensure that we enhance the level of integration and accountability from all stakeholders. Time in the market versus timing the market, staying invested for the long term, and of course, improving our health span by enhancing healthcare innovation, clinical innovation. A big thank you to our panelists for having joined us this morning. I trust that you've all walked away with key nuggets and insights that have not only left you a lot more informed, but maybe even intrigued, so that you yourself ask yourself and your colleagues and your peers as you leave here this morning, what can we do differently on the back of what was presented here today? So that fundamentally this conversation is one of consequence, that in a year's time, in 10 years' time, will have shifted the radar in terms of making sure that more South Africans can retire comfortably. Mzwa, Sanmarie, Wouter, Dani, and Gerald, thank you so much for making time for this panel. Please give them a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, as we make our way off stage and hand back to Ulitile. Thank
you. I think we deserve to give Gugulethu Mfuphi and our amazing panelists just another round of applause. I think key takeaways for me is definitely meeting people where they're at and walking the journey with them and communicating with members in a manner in which they understand. And also I think Sanmarie touched on something that's very dear to my heart, protecting our breadwinners. Ladies and gents, as you can see on the screen, there is a QR code. So please, I encourage you to, scan the QR code, play around with it, just to ensure that you see how you're tracking in terms of retiring with dignity. Up next, we have our Managing Executive of Core Operations, who will be sharing some insights on our two-part claims update. So if we can hand over to Mr. Duran Chetty. The stage is yours.
Thanks. Good morning, colleagues and partners. I've got a very exciting topic, and I think it dovetails nicely on the back of the last panel conversation. I think we spoke about data, and I thought it's important to give you some of the key data points. I think Dani spoke about the two-pot withdrawals, and I think as we walk away as colleagues, it's important to understand how are we going to change the behavior of our customers, and I think that's crucial for the age of confidence and as we transition through this claims journey with you. And I know everyone's very excited about claims. I see all of your emails every day. I feel like I know you. I want to come and sit down and have a conversation, but I promise you the lunch break is for that. I'm going to try and cover some of the key data points with you today. And I thought it's important just to be, this room is our partnerships, and Kanisa started with saying our family. So I'm going to be transparent and I'm going to share as much as we can, because the colleagues who sit in the room are actually our key partners. So I'm going to cover three important topics around claims. It's the emergency savings. I think everyone spoke about it, on the two-part. The withdrawals and retirement, normal withdrawals and retirements as we talk about. The the claims that come through on a monthly basis, and as well as our member and broker servicing via the call center. I think everyone had some challenges back in September. Everyone remembers that everyone came in. I'll talk about some bus loads that came to our building, and how did we manage our customers. I just want to get the clicker, sorry about that. Thanks. Sure. So the two-pot emergency savings, I think it's, while we try to transition through a massive change in legislation, I think I wanted everyone to almost understand the challenges that we had to face as an insurer. Since 1 September to date, we've processed 223,000 claims. That's an expansion in our scope from what we were designed and built, and this was managed seamlessly as an insurance company. That's 3.5 billion in claims payments that we've done over this time. I think we spoke about the use of funds. You'll see that the average claim between 1 September to date has been about 16,000 Rand, which has been the withdrawal amount. And I think it's something that we must just ponder on, because you understand the type of customer that we're dealing with who's withdrawing 16,000 Rand. Someone spoke about the use of the funds, and the entire industry is trying to get a sense of what are these funds being used for. I've seen customer emails come through just before a long weekend, putting pressure on us and saying, please pay out the money fast, it's a long weekend. And we're thinking about what are the funds being used for? Is it for assets? Is it for building wealth? Is it for investments? Customers want to spend their money on a long weekend. And I'll take you through some of the stats, and I think there's some nice data points that you would appreciate. From 1 March to date alone, we've dealt with 58,000 claims. And that's a nice 160 million for SARS. I'm sure they were excited. And as well as we had to almost pay out 560 million. That's money out of the market. And we've managed to do a phenomenal job, I must say, as an insurer, because this 223,000 claims that have come through our teams have been processed all within 5 working days. Now that is I think from an industry perspective, we really got this right. And I know we've managed some of the complaints and some of the queries that have come through around the normal retirement claims, but I just wanted to put it in context. What was the change in legislation and what was the impact to us as an insurer? So I think that's just a phenomenal job to process 223,000 claims in a short period of time, which is an extension of our scope within 5 days. You'll see the salaries, which is quite an important data point, that the individuals that are withdrawing are earning between 3 and 15,000 Rand a month, and that's the majority of the individuals that are withdrawing from their funds. The next graph is quite interesting. It gives you a bit of a sense of, you'll see a peak in September last year, talking to the fact that we had about 83,000 claims which came through in 1 month. And then you'll see the curve slowly dwindle down, and then you'll get a bit of a peak. And then you saw the new financial year kick in, and then you see March, the next jump, about almost 40,000 claims that came through. Now I can tell you that 72% to 75% of it was repeat customers. So they withdrew their funds in September. They waited to accumulate the minimum again in March, and they came back and 72% withdrew again. I was chatting to Dani earlier, and we were talking about the portal was very active in March with the whole 80,000 customers. So everyone is constantly checking. Can I access my money? Can I access my money? And as soon as you're ready to access it, you withdraw the balance out of it. So this behavior is extremely worrying, right? On the back of the age of confidence and how do we bring down the retirement age, we've got customers who are making sure that as soon as the funds are available, it's withdrawn. And it's withdrawn for a long weekend. I saw it around the Easter time. It's Easter, pay my money. It's Easter, pay my money. And I thought we need to change the behavior of our customers. And the two-pot was almost put in place around the vested, the savings, and the retirement to encourage a different behavior. But we can see that the behavior of the consumers in South Africa, who are constrained at the moment, are just trying to withdraw this for the basic needs. And I think that's something that we really need to ponder on. And yes, we're dealing with a new claim type, almost about 5,000 or 6,000 a month claims that come through over and above the peak periods that we still need to manage and process within those 5 working days. Next up is the contentious aspect around the normal withdrawal and retirement claims. And our colleagues, it's been, I wanted to set the scene amongst the claims that we've been processing. The team has been working very hard to manage the normal withdrawal and retirement claims that have been coming through on the normal retirees that you get through and the normal resignations that come through on a monthly basis. So the pie chart is, I'll reflect on it a little later, but I think that the key component that I wanted to bring to your attention is that Two-Pot was not just about emergency savings, and I think everyone focused on the emergency savings and that customers can access the emergency savings. Can you process it? What it actually brought about was massive complexity to the insurer. We had to change the way in which we process claims. So our systems had to be redesigned, our processes had to be redesigned, our policies had to cater for it, and that created a massive complexity in how we process our claims. So from 1 September to date, we almost had to, each claim tripled in complexity. We almost had to take each claim and process it 3 times over. You had to pay out each component. And then SARS came to the party and said, thank you very much. You'll also need to send us sequential tax directives, one at a time. And as we get the first tax directive, then you can send us the next tax directive, and so on and so forth, which made this even more complex. And just to add to it, we had to put a lot of focus into development to manage this new type of claim, which created a lot of pressure on our business and our people. So the claims environment became extremely complex overnight for the insurers. And I really feel for the claims guys out there. I'm not just because it's me, but they've taken a pure beating in the market across the industry, because you have to keep up with all this legislative changes, and on top of it, you've got a lot of pressure from customers just trying to get their funds out of the system. So we've tried to prioritize a lot of the claims that came through, like our retirement claims. We understand people live from month to month. We've put it into dedicated teams, and we've processed a massive portion. So, I share some of the volumes with you so that you get a sense of it. Over and above the 220,000 claims we processed, just from 1 September to date, we've received over 40,000 normal withdrawal and retirement claims. That's a 40,000 split between a very short period of time, with the complexity of processing this claim 3 times over. Now, when you see some of the delays that we've seen in the market, and I think you all understand that it's RFI, so customer comes through, he doesn't complete his form correctly, he doesn't send his supporting documents, that gets pushed back to you, you've got to go back to the customer, you've got to send it back, and the graph shows the left-hand side, which is all the mixture of colors, the yellow, the green, and a light darker green, which almost reflects the back and forth between the insurer, the customer, the waiting periods, and what we've almost experienced is a breach in our SLA, which everyone is well aware of it. We've put out an SLA initially that we were trying to maintain on the back of changing the claims process quite a bit from our previous automation that we had in place. It's put a lot of pressure on our team. But I've got good news on the next slide. We've done some, I think, fancy footwork, I must say, over the last couple of months, just trying to focus on how do we take claims forward. So from the 1st of May, we've implemented a new claims process, which leveraged robotics and AI and automation and integration and all the fancy things that come with technology. And we've now built onto our web platform, the withdrawal and retirement claims now comes through very automated process. So everything that's been submitted since the 1st of May goes into the web portal, and I think that's the standard that everyone is forced to utilize. When that comes into our business, those claims are now processed within 9 working days. By day 7, customers have their cash. By day 9, the claim is finalized. We've tested it to date. I think we've processed about 2,500 claims since the 1st of May, and 80% of them went directly into this automated process, which has been a seamless experience. Actually, no human touches it. So all your withdrawal and retirement claims that come through now, there's no human that touches it, segments it. It's all designed on the system. It's processed and it pays out. And that is, I think, an important note is this is still max cash requests. So 80% of those claims, customers are still asking for max cash. So you're talking about data points, and we're talking about the emergency claims, which customers are withdrawing as soon as they have available funds. On the flip side of it, on the back of a resignation, customers are all taking max cash. So 80% to 90% of those claims are still max cash. People just want their full funds. They're actually forced to keep the balance into an in-fund preservation. But I guess that's the behavior out there. And I think we need to start acknowledging that's the data points that we need to look at. So I think great news in going forward how we manage the claims, and the team is going to be focusing on a lot of different improvements over the next few weeks. We're going to automate the retirement process completely. We're looking into even the 20% of claims that don't go through automation, and how do we build in capabilities that we don't have to even touch it in the back office. And I've chatted to some of you about the experience on new claims, which has been fantastic. Some of the old claims, we're trying to bucket them and push them into this automation process, so you'll get much faster turnaround time in the next few weeks as we close out some of the claims that have been pending. But I am here at your disposal for further conversations after the presentation. I think I wanted to bring in the contact center, because your members are dealing with our contact center, so is the brokers. We've got a very well-equipped contact center, and starting last year, there was massive challenges, and I know you raised your concerns just around contactability, the ability to speak to someone, and September was a tough time. You can see we had almost an 18% connection rate with the customer, so we were picking up very few calls from the number of calls that have come through. You'll look right back into April, we are sitting at 99% of now calls being answered, and I'm talking about anything between 30 and 40,000 calls that come through either from your members or from the brokers themselves on a monthly basis. We don't miss a call, and for the few calls that we actually miss, we call back. So actually, the 99% is actually 100% of every single call that comes on a monthly basis. This is not calling through to a government agency where you would wait and no one would answer. We answer, and we talk to our customers. So every customer has a touch point, and every customer gets called back, or we answer the call at 99.9% of the time. I think that's a fantastic result, actually above the industry standard, way above the industry standard. And this is dealing with all of the complexities around two-pot and everything in between. I think I mentioned over and above the call center, we also opened walk-in centers, both in Cape Town and Johannesburg. It's been an interesting journey for us, because we've got to see the customers face-to-face at our buildings, queued up and waiting for their payments. And I've seen bus loads arrive, organized buses, which have brought people to a premise and said, I'm here for my money. And it's been an exciting journey, but just getting the data points and understanding what the customer is going through has been a phenomenal journey for us. And we will continue to focus on building solutions that make it easier for you to do business. And I promise you, we are fully invested into the customer experience right now. And we definitely want to provide you the data that you need as we go through this age of confidence. And we want to build up the solutions in a way that our customers change their behavior over time. So thank you, and I look forward to our conversations.
Thank you very much, Duran, for that insightful presentation. I'm sure everyone is going to want to ask Duran questions towards the end. But just to remind everyone that there will be a Q&A session towards the end. So if you have any questions, jot them down, because you will have that opportunity to ask some questions from all our panelists and ExCo members. Up next, we have a topic that's occupied the market for the past number of years. We're almost at the tail end of the program, as we found, I hope you guys have found these discussions great thus far. We now shift gears a bit as we delve into the nuts and bolts of investments, specifically sustainable investments, an important topic given the chances and the state of the current geopolitical landscape. So ladies and gentlemen, please help me in welcoming our senior investment specialist at Sanlam Corporate, Ashley Daswa, to take us through the topic. I told you, Asbaki's also make mistakes around the names. Apologies. Ashley, the stage is yours.
Thanks, Ole. I see that my surname get butchered quite a lot, but it's very simple. And I'm actually vendor, but a lot of people don't ask themselves, what is DASWA? But it has a meaning. We'll talk about it someday. But good morning, everyone. I think it's great to be in the presence of all of you here. And there's been a lot of great insights that has been shared regarding the age of confidence. And as Ole did mention now, I'll be sort of shifting your sight towards more investments, but particularly sustainable investing. And just building up to what was shared earlier on by Sis Khanyisa around how people are going to live longer and they're going to retire relatively long. I think it's important that we also bear in mind that with that increased life expectancy, there's actually going to be a longevity risk. And as you live longer, then it implies that you have to be in a more sustainable society. And it's quite sad to see the infrastructure that is going down. I sadly just meet my friends who are in Joburg, and they say they can either have water or electricity, but they can't have both at the same time. But those are realities that most of our members that you and I present here represent. And if they are going to retire, they should at least retire comfortably in environments where there's proper water and sanitation. And it doesn't mean that if you live in Soweto and suddenly when you are at 65 or you're 80, you're about to retire, you're going to move to Hyde Park. You want to be having sufficient water and sanitation in Soweto where you are. And that's why I think it's important for us to also then ask ourselves question and say, what is the role of pension funds? In as much as there's low savings rate, we can all agree to the stats that says, in terms of pension fund savings, they're north of 2 trillion rands. And I think that's where they can actually change in terms of pushing the entire aspect. So why sustainable investing? And I think that's very much the crux of what I'll be sharing today. And to most of us, we tend to think about sustainable investing as very Eurocentric conversations, something that, is a climate-related issues. We are dealing with social issues in the South African front. But, at the center of it all, it's really more about us aligning our financial interest to the long-term societal stability. As I still use the same example of infrastructure that is wailing in this country, we have to think about questions of saying, how do we have conversation relating to climate? How do we have conversation relating to social issues that we're faced with? Yes, we don't want to see Steinhoff 2.0 still happening in global, in SA Inc., but at the same time, there should be key focus where it's more balanced from an E, S, and the G. But also at the same time, I think in the whole context of, age of confidence, if you come to think of it, Gerald and others, they spoke about healthcare and those staggering stats that they actually mentioned. And the question is, if we are confronted with those challenges, how about us channeling our investments towards healthcare, towards economic growth? We spoke about high level of unemployment. We spoke about the infrastructure investments that we need. And I think at the core of this, the question is that, is sustainable investing philanthropy? Are we just doing something good with the hardworking South Africans' money? And the answer is no. It's really more about us future-proofing those investments such that, people that you and I present in the room actually represent. And I want to ask this question in a very rhetoric way because, as we were also doing some work relating to the Sanlam benchmark, we also asked some of these questions. And I want to pose this question to all of us. And as it was mentioning during the panel discussion, that let this not just be a very well-educated and smart conversation, but let's change the conversation in the rooms that once we leave here, we are going to have. And the question is, if we us who are present in the room, who are responsible for all this fiduciary responsibility that we have for the hardworking South Africans, which area can we invest our money in? And I really want you to ponder and think about it. Is it education and skills development? Is it healthcare and well-being? Is it more about job creation and economic growth? We have seen the stats. We have seen how the job numbers have been looking like. And I think the question backs to that. And as such, I think there is a role in which retirement funds can actually play. In this case, for them to be agents of change, I think more than anything else, it's just ensuring that we're integrating these ESG risks when it comes to the different asset classes in which all our members are invested in. over and above that, I think this is a topic on its own, just transition, that how can we transition in a very just manner that we're not leaving anyone behind, There's always a joke that says the JSE is like an old mining town, and we can all attest to it. There's towns in this city like Secunda and many other places that are just fully dependent on coal or rather mining. And the question is that how can we do it in a more inclusive way such that we can retrain people who were mine shafts and now they have to be retrained to get new skills. But I saw the core of it in terms of the different asset classes, particularly where we are invested in equity or fixed income. That's where you've got to sit in the table. If you buy shares of Sanlam, you now can actually dictate in terms of how Sanlam can actually drive change. And as such, you need to exercise your active ownership and stewardship. So where we have got a voice, let's make sure that we can actually influence that behavior. But also, it doesn't really end in these listed markets. There is more that we can do from an impact investing and also alternative investments that are out there. And I'll take you through really in terms of our approach, but particularly how can you do that in terms of the different goals that are out there. So in South Africa, whether you believe it or not, there is what we call NDP, National Development Plan. Whether it's going to be reached by 2030 or not, at least it's a benchmark we have. Also from a global front, there's the SDGs that are also aimed to actually be achieved in 2030. And there's more investments in which we can have that are aligned to those types of strategies. But more than anything else, I think sustainable investing is really about us changing our fiduciary duty, not just expecting to be investing into asset classes that just gives you return that you retire comfortably, but just ensuring that you're doing so by future-proofing those retirements. And so one will then ask the question and say, yes, you're standing here, you're telling us all these good things, but how is actually Sanlam doing it? And I'm here just to present to you the four different approaches in which at Sanlam Investments we actually approach responsible investments. And the first one is really about ESG integration. And by ESG integration, it's really, in simple terms, it's just saying, how can you identify material ESG risks and opportunities on the different asset classes? So whether you're investing into a listed asset or investing into a private market, as you do a due diligence in each of those portfolio companies, what are the material ESG risks? And I'll show you some of the case studies later on in terms of how internally we actually look into it. Secondly, it's really more about us now saying we've got to sit in the table. We have identified those material ESG risks and opportunities. Now, let's rather drive change by active ownership. So let's vote in terms of proxy voting that we have. Let's collaboratively engage with other like-minded investors that we are invested in. And there, it's more about us exercising that stewardship that we have. Fourthly, thirdly, it's sustainability-themed investments. And this is where you are saying to yourself, we want to invest into societal issues that we want to address. So I mentioned job creation, and rather the question I asked you, if your answer is education and skills development or job creation, that is a specific theme that you're saying, let's invest towards addressing those societal issues. And the last one, which I think is very interesting, is more about impact investing. And there it's very much of a niche. You've got a specific impact outcome that you want to achieve. So if you are saying you want to address a housing problem, that's very much what you call impact investing. And these are the different funds that we have internally, and I'll take you through now in terms of the different case studies. And if maybe I were to go back now just to show you the different approach, from now on I'll be taking you through the different case studies that just demonstrate what we do at Sanlam in terms of applying this approach that we have. And the first one is going to be about engagement in action. And I think to most investors that are here, and for all of you guys as you engage in different joint forums or engage with different trustees, etc., you always ask yourself a question and say, why did Stanhoff happen? Where were the investors? Was it only Bangila and a few other managers who actually kind of spotted it from afar? But the question is, there's a lot of things that are happening in different listed companies. And I'm showing you a classic example here of Exxaro. I'm sure you have seen it. They were in the news for the wrong reasons for a couple of months, and people are getting suspended. But Sanlam Investments, they engaged Exaro, and they engaged Exaro from a governance practice point of view. And in summary, if you perhaps maybe aren't able to read what was there, there was a governance issue relating to the call of the resignation of their CEO. And it's a key governance issue if you come to think of it. If there's certain things that has been leveled against a CEO who has to drive the strategic objective of the company, and there, from an engagement point of view, there were some investigations that were done against her, and we engaged them to try to understand, what's really happening, because we have got a specific holding with this company. And of course, you can imagine Exaro is one of the best, I should say, coal producers out there. And with all those findings that were actually identified from the investigation, the CEO subsequently resigned. And whether it's the right thing to do or not, and I know a lot of people are writing pieces about it, but it's a governance issue that, we as investors who have got a seat in the table, we should engage specific investors and ask questions about, what is happening from a governance point of view. What is happening, even in this case, for this company called Data Tech? If you come to think of it, remuneration is one of the big fundamental governance issues in terms of, how we as Sanlam, we actually look at it from different themes when it comes to stewardship. And there, it's not just about us just having dialogue with these companies, also us engaging with them in a manner that we ask them to say, do they have any specific targets? So from different realms that they have for their CEOs and other senior management people, what is the STI that is there? What is the LTI? So maybe let me use the right word so that people don't think I'm talking about. What is the long-term incentive scheme and short-term incentive schemes for the different CEOs that they have? And those are issues that if you leave them unchecked, you'll actually realize that it results even not to the performance of the company. And that's where you tend to see that ESG integration, identifying these material risks that were there, and you are able to spot them from afar. Then let me now take your mind into sustainable themed investments. And if you were to probably maybe forget all the slides that I've spoken about, this is one slide that I think you should at least pay much attention. Because in this case, to the question that I asked earlier on as to where would you invest your money, considering the different issues we faced with. If you look at where there's more impact that can take place, you can see that alternative investments from the level of influence from the investor to the exposure into the different investment theme. Alternative investments is where you can actually achieve a lot of those societal issues that I've actually raised. Because if you come to think of it, a listed company, you can only engage them on a specific material ESG issues. But if you're investing into a specific project that is addressing a specific societal issue, you are able to drive that change. And I think, from how we have looked into this, we actually look into it against the UN SDGs. And you can see there, we're looking at SDG number 4, 7, 9, 10, and 13. But the question is also, from a Sanlam perspective, what are the different funds that you guys have? And I'm putting this slide particularly just demonstrating to you the issue of infrastructure. So if you didn't have an answer to the question I asked earlier on, now I'm showing you maybe an answer from my end, which is infrastructure. How can you respond to this wailing infrastructure? We can all attest to the fact that the infrastructure in this country is wailing, and there's so much that we can actually do in terms of us addressing jobs, us addressing inequality, us addressing climate-related issues. And they are not far-fetched. They are here. We all can see it. There are different funds, and here you can see, we invest north of 10 billion rand in terms of economic infrastructure. We also have one fund that we call it Sustainable Infrastructure Fund, and I'll show you one of the case studies on that fund. And there we provide debt funding to companies that are really addressing societal and economic infrastructure, and I'll explain that later on. And the other funds that you can see there, they're addressing more the climate-related issues. So if you look at, the Climate Fund Managers one, there we're particularly addressing climate-related issues. The others, the more water and sanitation. And if maybe you aren't aware, one of the key sources of energy that we are going to really get more traction in is actually green hydrogen. And Google was actually in Namibia, and I'm sure you can even talk quite a lot about it. And we've got both funds, in SA and also in Namibia that is just trying to just get us from, in terms of energy security, through green hydrogen, both in SA and also through Namibia. So let me just take you through one of the case studies in terms of the Sustainable Infrastructure Fund. As I mentioned, this is a fund that is addressing economic infrastructure. And we provided debt funding to one company called Alien Fuel. And this company, what it does is that it actually provides energy to SAPI. You probably are aware that they've got a big plant up at Tukomazi in KZN. And, through our debt funding, these are guys that are saying, how can we use the landfill that we get from all the pulps from the trees that they cut down? And they use all that landfill to actually generate energy out of it. And that, as a result, you can see almost 285 tons of CO2 emissions that has been mitigated. But it's not just about them getting a much cleaner energy, but it's also job security. If you come to think of it, how many households in rural KZN, they can be supported from 68 people that have been employed full-time. There is more multiplier effect, and even much more. There are people that are getting jobs through that funding that we provided to them. More than 49 individuals who actually got those jobs. But I think more than anything else, this is not just us saying, this is a company, Alien Fuel, they're providing clean energy to SAPI. Yes, we are creating, jobs, but it's us really addressing some of these societal issues. It's us addressing the climate-related issues that we are all confronted with. But also at the same time, it's us, just making sure that those people, they can also retire comfortably if you come to think of it from a multiplier effect. Let me then also take you through, one of the classic examples, which is an underlying asset within the property impact fund that I mentioned earlier on, from an impact investing point of view. And in this case, if you are like myself who come from rural Venda, we know how it is that you've got this small town and everybody coming through a taxi or a bus to come and shop there. We have one asset in Mpumalanga called Kwaka Plaza. And there, I think one of the things that really helps us to really try and measure the impact that we have through the impact investing that we've done, it's really more about affordability. Yes, you can have a big mall, but what if that mall is actually vacant? What if, the vacancy rate is quite high? And in this case, you've got, almost majority of those tenants are actually local brands. Yes, you're going to have one anchor client that you have there, be it ShopRite or whatever. But in this case, you've got, a small pharmacy of a guy who lives in the neighborhood. You also have like a big wholesale where all the people who have got spaza shop in the nearby area, they drive in and they come through there. But it's not just about affordability, it's also accessibility, that the people who live in and around the area, they can easily come in there. So that mall becomes a place where people actually meet and converge. And as you come to think of it, there is more, additionability in a sense that there you're actually getting, it's like a catchment area where everybody else comes through there. And we don't just have this, impact themes that we put there. It's just us trying to use a lot of data to really try to understand the demographics of people that lives in the area and say, how can you respond to these individuals? And yes, it's for people to spend there, but in terms of job creations that is there, in terms of, us driving change, there's more that could be done. And these are some of the practical things that just demonstrate how we as Sanlam, we're integrating ESG in terms of, engagement and stewardship that we have, and also sustainability theme type of investments that I've taken you through, Alien Fuel, and then also this impact investing, one of the assets that we have. But then now, I think it's important for us to then ask ourselves a question: what is the call for action? And yes, you're gonna remember that I was here and I spoke for a few minutes, but what can we do once we leave here? And I think it's the big question that we should all ask ourselves, that what is it that we can do? And to us who are here, be it a broker or a trustee or maybe a member of a joint forum, the critical question we should be asking is that, are we receiving clear information in regards to ESG reporting and impact from the different managers? And I can tell you now, there's like more than 100 standards of ESG that are out there. But I really want to empower all of us here that can we go there and engage this manager so that we better understand, and we better understand in a sense that we can easily communicate it even to our members who doesn't even know what ESG is. And equally so, I think it's also important that, and in as much as what guides us as pension funds and asset managers alike, the different investment policy statements that are out there. One of the findings that we have, which you will see during benchmark, is the fact that some of the members they don't even have an investment policy statement that integrates ESG. And these are questions that I think we have to ask whenever we go to these joint forums. And ultimately, I think the question that we should at least have an answer to as we leave here is that, are we really investing for the future of South Africa or away from it? And I think for me, that is one of the biggest call for action that we should be asking ourselves, particularly with the age of confidence and the stats that were actually presented to us. I think finally, what is very important is just for us to remember that, retirement funds, they have got the influence to shape the South African members and how they will actually retire. If you really come to think of it, people are saving quite low, but in as much as we are not going to say, we're going to go the route of, how pension funds were forced to invest a certain way. But I really want us to change the conversation in the room each time whenever we engage with the different managers. Equally so, I think it's important that let's change the narrative. Let's change the way we see sustainable investing. I know people define it in different ways. It's ESG, responsible investing, sustainable investing. It's not really a nice to have. It's not like we're doing it for the good, for us to feel good at the end of the day. I think it has been proven that there is actually ways in which it delivers long-term returns, and more so in this world of tariffs and Trump and everything else that we live in. And I think my final point is that, there is a call for us to actually reframe the fiduciary duty. We are all here representing the hardworking South Africans who are getting up every morning in this winter and this rain for them to ensure that they actually can retire comfortably. And in the midst of all these unstable and social-related issues, I think it's important that we ensure that those people actually retire comfortably. So with this, I hope that we will then go and engage with the different managers, will engage with the different stakeholders with an intent to ensure that those individuals, they can retire comfortably, they can retire with dignity, but they can retire comfortably even in the areas in which way they are. We don't want them to be going elsewhere. Yes, they'll be like Vota who wants to be in a yard somewhere, but they can do so with so much dignity. So with that, I'd like to thank you so much for the attention, and I'll be sitting right there at the back if you've got any question. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ashley. Are we investing for the future of South Africa or far away from it? Thank you so much for such an impactful presentation. Back on stage again, we have the man of the moment, Mr. Nzwa Shoniwa, our Managing Executive of Sanlam Umbrella Solutions, to offer insights into how the Sanlam Umbrella Fund can empower decision makers to improve retirement outcomes at scale and reach their normal retirement age. Nzwa, over to you.
Thank you, Ole. No pressure, eh? Yeah, so I think from our side, how we decided to tackle this topic is we got together in a room and started debating whose responsibility is it to address the crisis that we're in. So now you must understand, if you've got Anya in that room, it got a bit heated. Everyone had strong views on, it should be A, it should be B. So what I'll take you through is just a summary of some of those discussions. And where we started off was to say it's actually the intermediary's responsibility. The intermediary is responsible for making sure that members' retirement outcomes improve. They are in touch with the clients, they are in touch with the members, they are in touch with employers. Now, at the back of that, we looked at what are the different aspects where there's intermediary involvement. So I need to see the slides. And really, intermediaries play a crucial role in terms of providing appropriate quality advice. And we've seen it in our benchmark statistics, specifically from last year, where there's this call from employers around the need for quality financial advice for their members. And what we've also seen over the years, obviously, is that intermediaries will conduct a needs analysis, and this will help them to implement suitable solutions for their employers and their members. Now, at the back of that, the other role that intermediaries play is obviously, the educational initiatives that go through to members and also to employers. What's also required from an intermediary perspective is that you need to remain as industry experts. Gerald made the comment here during the panel discussion that unfortunately our landscape is evolving. It's not really a case of knowing what retirement is and how retirement benefits work. Members are asking questions around what do I get from a healthcare perspective, what else is offered from a value-added benefits perspective. So intermediaries now need to remain involved with everything that's happening within our industry, working closely, obviously, with product providers. Now, after going through all this, we realized that this would still not solve the issues that we've got in the industry. So we then switched and thought that actually it's the employer and the joint forum's responsibility to address this crisis. And where does the employer, fit into this whole equation? I think Voter touched on it and mentioned that the issue around data, we need to maintain accurate data, and I think San Marie also touched on it. To get to where we want to get to from an integration perspective, to make sure that members are getting the targeted communication that we speak about, we need to have the accurate data on our side. But over and above that, I think from an employer and joint forum perspective, this issue around providing cost-effective solutions, this also has a massive impact on net replacement ratios. There was a comment made earlier as well around the cost of risk benefits. So when you shop around and you've got the appropriate price from a risk benefit perspective, that has an impact on how much more members can contribute to the Aussie retirement savings. And given that we're operating in a system where there isn't much more that members can save, all those little savings actually add up when people get to retirement. And what you'd also see there is that we also felt that employers and joint forums have a role to play as it relates to education, so educating their members. And I made the comment earlier that we strongly feel that education of members and empowering members and improving financial literacy, this is where we can make a meaningful impact across all the stakeholders that sit within our space. So access to financial advice and planning tools, how do we roll those out to our members, and how do we get members to engage with all those tools that product providers provide? So now we've got intermediaries collaborating with employers and joint forums, but still this was not enough. So we switched gears and we thought maybe we need to bring the government into this. And this is why the GNU was set up, right? Is to improve retirement outcomes. But then from a government perspective, again, as we started discussing where the government fits in, I think the Treasury plays a key role in terms of how they direct where this industry goes. And from our side, simplifying the regulatory framework will make a massive impact for members. We've seen layer upon layer of legislation in our industry over the last decade. And what we need to understand, or what Treasury needs to understand, is that this added legislation brings with it additional costs for product providers such as ourselves. And ultimately, these costs are then passed on to members through advisory fees or administration fees. I think it speaks directly to some of the stats that Duran shared around our withdrawal claims process post-2-pot. So as much as the initiatives are good, we support them from a preservation perspective, there has to be better collaboration between ourselves as industry players and government. And then the issue around costs and consolidation of funds, that's obviously something that we support, as biased as I am. But I think from a cost perspective, we still feel strongly that umbrella funds is the way to go for members, simply because of the economies of scale that we now have in umbrella funds. David Gluckman shared with me some of the stats presented by the FSCA at the Actuarial Convention a few weeks ago. Since 2015, we've now moved from just over 5,000 active funds to just over 800 active funds. So it's happening. That's how big this switch from standalone funds to umbrella funds is. And I think another role that government can definitely play is this aspect around TCF. So by driving more competitiveness amongst umbrella funds, I think government can really make sure that pricing is kept in check, and also just the tax benefits that come with investing in umbrella funds. For a lot of people, there's a lot of different advice that goes out in the market. But I think we need to channel as a financial services industry for all members to understand which are the most tax-efficient vehicles for them to utilize and have the correct information on the benefits of utilizing those vehicles. And then the other one that I've added there is to say government also needs to have a solid plan in place. And what I mean by that, it's actually driven a conversation around a panel discussion that we're going to have at the Benchmark Symposium in a month's time. And for those who haven't registered, please do. It's on the 19th of June. But that panel discussion, what we're trying to achieve from it is to have SARS Commissioner, representation from Treasury, representation from Labour, we'll have business as well, and we'll also have the CISA CEO on the panel. And it's a discussion around where we come from as it relates to retirement reform, where are we today, and what is the ideal landing place from a retirement reform perspective where members will achieve better retirement outcomes. And I think what I mean by that is to say, in collaboration with government, in 10 years' time that Gugu mentioned, in 15 years' time, this is the ideal landing place where we know that members are now utilizing all the information and all the tools available to them. And we've increased this net replacement ratios because of actions that we took today. So I think that will be an interesting discussion to get the different views from the different stakeholders. But after all that, intermediary, employers, and government, we still felt that it's not enough. We're still not going to get the age of 80 down to 60, 65. So we thought we should bring the Sanlam Umbrella Fund into this. What role do the trustees play? And I think the Sanlam Umbrella Fund's responsibility is to ensure that we improve members' retirement outcomes. So where does the Umbrella Fund fit in? From our side, we really feel that the platform has to be simple, with appropriate defaults in place. We all know that most members end up, I think it's above 90% where members end up in the default arrangements. So if we've got the appropriate defaults in place, we're capturing a large part of the market or a large part of the participating employers that join our fund. And we also know that the fund plays a key role in communicating with members, employers, and ensuring that members have access to professional retirement benefit counseling. So we understand that as much as there's the intermediary, the broker, the advisor, we also have quite a lot of members that basically contact the fund directly. So what is that experience? What does it entail? And what is the type of advice that they're going to get when they contact the fund? We also know that this is a commercial umbrella fund. And I think it's important that the objectives of the fund, the trustees must align with the sponsor. As it relates to cost, as it relates to how we roll out some of the solutions and some of the products. And I think from my side, any compelling value proposition, as long as you've got a compelling value proposition in the market, the commercial aspect will sort itself out. And that won't only be through growth, but it will also be through retention. It's not a case of really trying to just drive up price and reach Kanyisa's targets, but the growth will happen as long as it makes sense for the members. And then after the umbrella fund, again, the discussion continued on, do we have enough? Have we ticked all the boxes? Can we now confidently say that if those 4 stakeholders collaborate, interact, we can get this retirement age down from 80 to 65? We didn't think so. We thought that the other player that needs to come to the party is Sanlam Corporate. Maybe specifically our CEO, Kanyisa, should play a role here. We can include it in her scorecard, and the industry will not allow or accept anything less than a 4 out of 5. But no, in all seriousness, when we looked at Sanlam Corporate's role as a sponsor, I think the sponsor needs to continuously invest in their value proposition and make sure that the intermediary experience as well as the client and member experience is one that members understand what retirement funding is, and is one where members continuously engage with their benefits. Now, we've seen from our benchmark results, and it's something that I mentioned earlier as well, that a lot of our clients are calling for this holistic value proposition that incorporates healthcare and quality advice. So how do we as a sponsor, Sanlam Corporate, respond to this? I think the call to action is that we need to urgently start interacting with Gerald, interacting with Sainte-Marie, to see how we package a solution that makes sense for you, for yourselves as intermediaries, where members understand that it's now an employee benefits value proposition, and it's not just a retirement solution. And I think as we equip our members with the right tools and support, this will obviously help improve retirement outcomes. So we need to innovate, we need to create efficiencies within our system, within our platform, and all those savings, I think, should be passed on to members. The lower we can get administration fees down, the better or the more that can be saved towards retirement and the better net replacement ratios that we'll see. Okay, and then lastly, we felt that actually, scrap everyone else, it's actually the members' responsibility. It's their retirement, it's them that are either going to work until 80 or 90, so they should sort themselves out. It's got nothing to do with Sanlam, it's got nothing to do with government. So what should the member be doing? And, it's always difficult given where literacy levels are in South Africa in terms of members' understanding when we talk about net replacement ratios or retiring at the age of 80. But I think members have to come to the party with regards to understanding their benefits and making informed decisions. It's really a key theme on the decisions you make today, the impact they'll have on the future, the impact they'll have on your net replacement ratio, the impact they'll have on your standard of living when you get to retirement. Now, I think what members can also look at is, they should always review their contributions, review the benefits that they've got in place. As you go through the life cycle, you might not need that much life cover. Or when you're younger, you might not need that much life cover. So I think members need to continuously engage and review their benefits. Now, another one that was spoken about earlier, which talks to members and some of the research that we've got in the benchmark survey, is the issue around debt. So we've seen it with the two-pot withdrawals that a lot of our members are struggling. They cannot increase their contributions towards retirement savings simply because of the debt levels that they have. From the surveys we've done post two-pot to understand why members access their emergency savings and what they use the money for, a lot of it was debt-driven. So should we see an environment where members start to reduce debt and save more, that will obviously assist with reducing this age and getting to a better net replacement ratio. But most importantly, again, members need to stay informed and educated around what's happening in the industry, why two-pot has been put in place, and why and what circumstances you should look at in order to access that emergency savings. So where did we end up? We're actually all responsible. So after all that, from intermediaries, government, members, Sanlam Corporate, the Umbrella Fund, we feel strongly that all these players that I've mentioned all have a role to play. I think we're all responsible in terms of improving these retirement outcomes that we keep talking about. The comment was made earlier that we have a lot of these sessions and there's a lot of repetition around what the problems are. I've been in the industry now for just under 20 years, and the issue around low savings rates and low preservation rates has been a recurring theme. I think what needs to really happen is much closer enhanced collaboration across all the parties that you're seeing on the screen in terms of where should policy go, where should retirement reform go, and how do we actually address and speak to members directly in terms of where they're at today to help them improve their retirement outcomes. So it's a collective effort that requires collaboration from all the different stakeholders. Now, where do we start? Again, this is always a difficult one, simply because of the unique circumstances that our economy is in. You would know better than I know around the fact that a lot of our members do not have that additional income to increase their contributions or any additional voluntary contributions. So from our side, we feel strongly that where we can make an impact across all the different stakeholders that I've shown you is this theme on education. There is a role to play from a government perspective, from a fund perspective, Sanlam Corporate as a sponsor, to enhance and increase the level of education that goes out to members. It has to be simple. Members need to understand it. And what it will ultimately mean is that members will then start engaging the retirement tools that we offer more frequently, not only when they're getting closer to retirement. So that's the one golden theme that came through as we looked at all the different stakeholders. And I think we all have a role to play here. So what are we doing as Sanlam Umbrella Solutions? Now, I also stole a slide from the 2025 benchmark results, which I had not told Molokhadi about, so apologies. I thought I'd tell you when I got here, then I forgot. But what we did see as a stat coming through from the 2025 benchmark results is that there is this call from umbrella funds as well as standalone funds. So we surveyed 168 participating employers in umbrella funds and 74 standalone funds. And you'll see it there. There is this call to include retirement planning in the school curriculum. And that tells you this is where government, again, can play a role. Financial literacy levels in South Africa are very low. And obviously that translates to the low saving rates that we're seeing. So how early can we start talking about finances and teaching kids in school, along with mathematics, that this is the importance of retirement and this is the importance of saving? So that's something that you'll see come through in the benchmark results. And from our side, we launched the Imali Zami webinar in 2021. And it's clear from the slide in front of you that the topics that have attracted the most members or the most views is where members want to understand how they can improve their retirement outcomes. So whenever we spoke about how do you manage your retirement savings on the portal, and how do you maximize your retirement savings? That's where we saw close to 4,000 members actually joining the webinar. So from our side, again, the power of data. This is telling us where we need to focus as this webinar evolves. And again, I think the call to action is for the people in the room to help us, now that we've got this platform, to get as much traffic coming to this platform so that members can be better equipped with more education on what's actually happening in the industry and how they can improve their retirement outcomes. And then the other aspect that we look at is that we've got the Sanlam knowledge base, which is a portal with a whole host of articles and videos that all our active members can access. And you'll see the spike from 2021 all the way to 2024. An expectation is that in 2025, we'll probably see even more people accessing the articles and the videos that we've got on our portal. So this is all positive news. And I think it's a matter of time before we see some sort of improvement in terms of the decisions that members make. And I think a slight improvement is simply a lower number of people accessing the emergency savings pot. That's the type of education that you're trying to get into the industry. And I think that's the type of education that will make an impact into the future. So from our side, again, we've got the portal, we've got the platform. It's that assistance or collaboration to make sure that we see more traffic going towards these platforms and members accessing the education that's readily available. And again, another aspect that I'll touch on here is as we engage members and we try to get members to access the Imali Zami webinars and our knowledge-based platform, I think rewards are going to play a key role. We are having a discussion internally around how do we bring rewards into our space to drive a certain type of behavior. I think the behavior that we're trying to drive is behavior around preservation and people increasing their savings rates. So, after all that, advisors, employers and joint forums, product providers, government, we need to collaborate. But importantly, and the comment was made earlier as well, it all has to be centered around the member. We need to understand what the member is asking for, what the member is struggling with, and then we need to solution for those challenges that the member has. So everything, all the discussions that we're having and all the solutioning that's happening in the background, I think from our side is we will definitely always have the member in the center of it all. But we must never, ever forget that as we come with products and as we, drive additional products towards intermediaries that we want them to take to their participating employers, members' life cycles keep changing, members' needs will keep changing. I think from our side as product providers, we need to stay close to that. And how we do that is continuously interacting with yourselves as intermediaries. So in closing, I think we're all part of the solution. And I strongly feel that intermediaries and advisors, which is most of the people in the room today, play a critical role in shaping clients' decisions, not only employers, but also members. I strongly believe that you guys are the trusted voice. And I think because you're the trusted voice, let's use that influence to drive that change that's needed in our industry. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Nzwa. We are all responsible indeed. And we are part of the solution. So that collaboration is indeed very, very important. Sadly, we've come to the end of our program. We were going to take questions, but because of time, we'll leave that to our networking session that will be taking place downstairs. So just some closing remarks from my side. The age of confidence, again, I'll reiterate, for us, it's not just a campaign or a theme. It's a bid to spark an uncomfortable yet necessary conversation. It's a conversation that confronts the real challenges facing South Africans, businesses, and the greater economy. And that pushes us to think deeply about what a confident retirement might look like for our members. Thank you to all our panelists, all our speakers, and our moderator, of course, but a special thank you to all the leaders in the room for taking the time for being with us this morning. Again, enjoy the networking session downstairs, and thank you very much.